Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes, o buenas noches. Hello, it's morning for me here. I'm currently in Mexico City. I wanted to say that I'm on a busy street, so I apologize in advance for any noises you might hear. And also, these are the very first words that are coming out of my mouth today. I feel a bit under the weather, so just have that in mind. But today I'm going to be analyzing Meghan Markle's Spanish. Now, I briefly watched this quick 1-minute video, and she absolutely kills it, so I wanted to go over it with you so that you can learn some Spanish from this video. I hope you like it.
Hola. Ahí muy buenas tardes.
So first thing I want to say is that huge props to Meghan for speaking Spanish in front of a big crowd. It's one thing to speak in Spanish with people you don't know, but it's another thing to speak in Spanish with a giant crowd. I'm sure that if you're learning Spanish, you know that when you speak Spanish to someone, it can sometimes be quite nerve-wracking. So imagine going in front of a big crowd. I was actually reading some of the comments on this interview, and people were being quite nasty, but you have to understand that it's hard to speak in Spanish in front of a big crowd. So hats off to you, Meg. One of the biggest reasons a native Spanish speaker will speak to you in English instead of Spanish if you try speaking Spanish with them is because they hear your accent. Now, I always tell students the easiest thing you can do to improve your accent very quickly in Spanish is to master the vowel sounds. So the vowels in Spanish are the exact same as they are in English. A, E, I, O, U. The only thing is they have a different pronunciation. So we have A, E, I, O, U. I promise you, if you just practice those, your accent is going to become much better. I'm sorry for all the noise.
Me gustaría empezar en español.
Okay, so she just said me gustaría, okay? Me gustaría is the conditional tense in Spanish. It's this idea of would in English. Now, don't get this confused with the imperfect tense. For example, yo no haría eso si yo fuera tú. I wouldn't do that if I were you. I would not. Okay, that's the conditional. Versus, yo no hacía eso cuando era niño. I wouldn't do that when I was a kid, or I would not do that when I was a kid. When they're translated into English, they can take on the same idea of would, okay? But don't get that confused, okay? Conditional and imperfect are two different tenses.
Porque estamos en su país, mi marido y yo.
Okay, so she says, porque estamos en su país. Whenever I hear a person say, and they're speaking Spanish, it's a dead giveaway that they either grew up in the United States, they live in the United States, or they're not a native speaker. So instead of saying when speaking Spanish, it's better to say It sounds silly, but most Spanish speakers will not say or They will say or they'll say something like este.
Y puedo sentir este abrazo de Colombia.
Okay, the way she said Colombia was awesome. So later on in the video, she says that she learned Spanish in Argentina. The accent from Colombia is probably one of the most popular Spanish accents that students will choose. Typically, students like to learn Spanish from Mexico, Colombia, maybe Argentina, Spain. Those are typically the most popular ones I see.
Entonces, gracias, muchas gracias, porque la cultura, la historia.
Okay, so here she says, muchas gracias. Porque is an interesting word because we have porque, which means because, and we also have porque, which means why. Now, porque, meaning because, is both of those little words, por and que, put together. If we separate them and then put a little accent on the que, now it means why. When we ask questions in Spanish, we typically will put accents on little words like que or como, for example. The only way that we can tell the difference between the two is based off of context clues. So the way that she's speaking right now, I understand she's saying because and not why, because in the context of the sentence, it wouldn't make sense to say why.
La cultura, la historia, todo estaba como un sueño, este viaje.
She says, todo estaba como un sueño, este viaje. Instead of saying, todo estaba como un sueño, este viaje, it's better to say, todo ha sido como un sueño durante este viaje. When we use this idea of ha sido, that is haber, the verb haber, meaning to have, not to physically have, but the idea of to have done something. And then we add that past participle. So in this case, sido, coming from the verb ser, meaning to be, or in this case, to have been. So she was trying to say this trip has been awesome so far, basically, but the way she said it wasn't necessarily grammatically correct. Once again, she is doing an absolutely fantastic job, especially because we know that she's speaking to a giant crowd.
Y perdona si mi español no está perfecto.
Okay, she says, y perdona si mi español no está perfecto. When she says perdona, that is what we call an informal command. Now, in this case, because she's speaking to a large group of people, it's better to say perdonen, because in Spanish, that would be a command to a group of people. So, perdonar is the AR verb meaning to forgive. So, if I say perdona, it means I'm talking to you, the tú person, which is informal. However, if I'm talking to a group of people, we will say perdonen. Okay, so we could say perdónenme or espero que me perdonen, for example. Once again, these are very nitpicky things, and I'm really not trying to be critical. I just want you as a student to see and learn from this video.
Y perdona si mi español no está perfecto, porque yo aprendí hace 20 años en Argentina.
Okay, so another thing I want to touch on is she says, perdona porque mi español no está perfecto. Now, you might think that this would actually be incorrect, and that you should use es perfecto. But it's actually okay to use está in this situation. Now, remember that ser is used for permanent states of being, whereas estar is used for temporary states of being. So in this case, we could argue that while her Spanish isn't perfect now, it has the potential to be perfect in the future. And therefore, it's okay if we use estar instead of ser. So it'd be perdona porque mi español no está perfecto. I just want to say, she learned 20 years ago in Argentina, and here she is in the present day speaking Spanish in front of a crowd. Once again, huge hats off to you, Meghan, for doing that. And I would like to say, if you are nervous when speaking Spanish to people, or you feel uncomfortable, or you're too embarrassed to start conversations with people, remember that 99% of the time, people are going to want to help you with your Spanish, and they're not going to make fun of you or laugh at you. Okay, so get out there and try speaking Spanish with people.
Yo aprendí hace 20 años en Argentina, pero estoy tratando.
Okay, I'm sorry that I keep pausing the video, but I want you to learn. Okay, so she says, pero estoy tratando. Okay, tratando. When we hear a word in Spanish end with ando or yendo, that is the English equivalent of an ing verb. So in this case, tratar, which is an infinitive AR verb meaning to try, when we cut off the AR and we add ando, now it becomes trying. Okay, so tratar would be to try, whereas tratando would be trying. If we have an ER verb like comer, for example, it would end in yendo. So we go from comer to comiendo. So she said, pero estoy tratando, but I am trying.
Porque acá puedo sentir esta comunidad.
Okay, she says, pero acá puedo sentir esta comunidad. Okay, an interesting thing, and if you're Colombian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes when Colombians speak Spanish, I typically hear them use the word acá more than aquí means here, okay? Right here. Acá is more of a general way to say over here or around here. And it's the same thing with the word ahí, for example. Oh, está ahí. It's there. But if I say está allá, it would be it's over there or it's around there. Okay, so that's the difference between acá and aquí and ahí and allá.
Acá puedo sentir esta comunidad.
Okay, she says esta comunidad. Now, once again, we're nitpicking here. Meghan, you're killing it. It should be esta comunidad because it's la comunidad. It's feminine. Now, typically, words that end with de or d will be feminine.
Y este es el sentimiento que es lo mejor.
Es este sentimiento que es el mejor. I think in this situation, it would be better to say lo cual. Lo cual meaning which. When we put that little word lo in there, it's referring to this idea of el sentimiento, which is what she had referred to prior to saying que es. When she says lo mejor, if we were to flip it around the way that I had said, better say el mejor, because we shouldn't be using lo 2 times there. Instead of saying este sentimiento que es lo mejor, we would say este sentimiento, lo cual es el mejor.
Vicepresidenta, mi amiga, muchas gracias. Y bueno, ahora en inglés.
Okay, so right at the end, instead of saying vicepresidenta, she says vicepresidenta. Once again, we're really just nitpicking here. She did an absolutely fantastic job. But instead of saying vice with the English pronunciation, we would say vice, which sounds a little silly, but vice, which would be the proper Spanish pronunciation. Once again, Meghan did an amazing job, and I hope you've learned something new from this video. If you'd like to learn more Spanish from me, you can check out my website, SpanishFromNate.com. Muchas gracias por ver el video y espero que tengas muy buen día. Adiós. If you want to become conversationally fluent in Spanish as fast as possible, check out the Fluent Spanish Speaker Academy. Here's what some of our current members have to say. Sarah, a UC Irvine graduate, says, Nate is an awesome teacher. Since he learned Spanish as a second language, he understands where his students are coming from and knows what teaching methods work best for non-native speakers. Thank you, Nate. We stand behind our program with a 30-day full refund policy. If you're not happy within 30 days, we'll give you your money back, no questions asked. To find out if the Academy is right for you, click the link on the screen or in the description below.